All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us in this afternoon's program. This month, we are celebrating the Indigenous Peoples Month, and because of this, we are very excited to launch our first book written for the protection of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. This is the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, Commentaries and Guides in Practice. Of course, our beloved Rex author, Attorney Melanie Pimentel. All right, so let us open the program with a prayer to be led by our guest, Sister Victricia Pascasio. We would like to enjoin everyone to be in the presence of our dear Almighty Father for our opening prayer, to be followed shortly by the singing of our national anthem.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Faithful God, we are gathered in Jesus' name to gratefully celebrate the creative energies of your Spirit of truth and love. You have graciously sustained these in your daughter, Melanie. Over 3 decades, impelled by a strong personal commitment, she journeyed with Indigenous communities, seeing their struggles within the realities they are immersed in, led her to her mission to search for answers and meaning between those challenges and struggles. The answers, which are still evolving, are within this book. We invoke your blessings on Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, Commentaries and Guide in Practice she is launching today. May it be a guide not just for Indigenous communities, but for everyone. May her ardent desire that the rights of Indigenous peoples are truly recognized and respected be also the ardent desire of all who will read this book. Father, we ask you this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
All right, so thank you, everyone. Before we get to the exciting parts of the program, we would like to inform you that we have arranged an online raffle. Our dear viewers, you have a chance to win a copy of this book. Okay. But before that, okay, masyado ako na-excite. Let's have the national anthem first. Thank you.
Mga kabayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, regas ng sinangalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka masisigiw, sa nagataputok sa simoy at sa langit kong bangaw, ay hinatang tula, tawid sa pagkayang minamahal, ang isang ng matawad ko'y tagumpay na nag-iindig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pang ay di magdidinig. Luman ang araw ng walang pagsinta, mo'y langit sa piling ko. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga akin, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Okay, ayan guys. So, sobra tayong na-excite because our lineup for today ay talaga namang nakaka-excite, no? Pati ang program natin. So, apologies for that. Hindi ko po sinasadya na unahan ng ating Philippine National Anthem. But, no, as part of our excitement, dear viewers, again, you have a chance to win a copy of this book. Mamaya yan lahat sa ating online raffle. All you need to do is you have to register in the link pinned in the comment section for you to be included in our live raffle draw later. Now, if you are the lucky winner, what you need to do is you have to comment present okay, on the comment section within 30 seconds after I have announced your name. So don't forget, pag sinabi ko yung name, you have to comment present. Okay, if not, no, we will be drawing another winner to give chance to others, of course. Now, the announcement of 3 raffle winners will be done later before we end this program. So make sure that you stay with us all throughout the program. Now, just to tell you, okay, 2 winners will be via raffle draw, okay, and 1 winner will be handpicked by our very own attorney, Melanie Pimentel. So kaya naman stay tuned, okay, para manalo kayo ng ating exciting prizes. Okay, so once again, good afternoon, dear partners in learning. 2021 is a big year for Rex, and we are happy to be able to share this milestone with you as we continue to serve you as the new, bigger, and better Rex education. Let us all watch this.
From the mid-20th century, during a time of challenges and hopeful rebuilding, from an alliance of shared passion, Rex was born, persevering through decades, sustained by faith, emboldened by vision. Rex has become a tradition of service to the nation. With its first publications, Rex pledged itself to a more proactive role in education. As evolving education required new tools and services, so did Rex expand. In the dawn of the 21st century, when education is demanded to foster learning in all forms, learning within and beyond the walls of institutions, for sustaining today for the future. We are championing education. We are now Rex Education.
About Rex Education, and to officially open today's event, let us hear from Rex Education's Chief External Affairs Officer, Ms. Danda Crimelda Buhain.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for making time for today's very exciting discussion and lecture. On behalf of Rex Education, allow me first to introduce to you our brand, a community, an advocacy, and a tradition of service dedicated to inspiring every Filipino lifelong learner to advance themselves and uplift others. With 70 years of service and dedication to education, we have evolved from that iconic bookstore that we all know to something bigger and more significant. From just providing learners with published educational materials, we are now accompanying everyone throughout their lifelong journey. Learning in all forms, beyond the walls of institutions, learning for delight, enlightenment, and fulfillment. And true to our tradition of service, Rex Education is guided by the Educampion philosophy, which seeks to rally and empower education duty bearers. We believe that all of us are educampions, champions for education who are all working with the best interests of the Filipino whole learner in mind. As Rex Education, our mission is to empower all duty bearers in the field of education to champion education no matter what the circumstances are. It is through and because of this that we are excited to spend the next 2 hours with you as we come together to unveil our most updated offering for the Philippine legal community. Just in time for the celebration of National Indigenous Peoples Month this October, Rex Education is releasing this book titled The Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, Commentaries and Guide in Practice by Attorney Melanie Pimentel. Attorney Pimentel has been a strong advocate and defender of Indigenous Peoples' rights over the years. In fact, she was essential to the recovery of the Mangyan's lost Eden, the Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Reservation. In 2020, after helping fight it for 15 long years, this is why you know that this book is produced by a genuine advocate who has a humble heart for the cause of one of the most vulnerable sectors of the Philippine society. In this book, Attorney Pimentel has provided a comprehensive and practical guide to the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, as well as references to international best practices. More importantly, she has imbued this book with real-life experiences and aspirations presented in a reader-friendly narrative for a broad range of stakeholders so that we can attain the full potential of the law to safeguard the cultural integrity and rights of our Indigenous and brothers and sisters. This is also why I have no doubt that this book will be a guiding star in the implementation of the IPRA and advancement of Indigenous rights in our country. No one can better provide analysis, insight, and recommendation for implementation of the IPRA than our author, who has been working with Indigenous communities on the front lines for well over 19 years. She has also worked as a lecturer for the protection on ancestral domains of the UST Graduate School of Law and as a senior state solicitor for the Office of the Solicitor General. Friends, it is with great honor that I invite you to join me in welcoming today our dearest partner in championing legal education, Attorney Melanie Pimentel.
Good afternoon, good day to everyone, to my family who are here right now with me in Zoom, friends from across the globe, friends in Facebook, members of Indigenous communities, and fellow learners at IPRA. Before I proceed, allow me please to acknowledge my ancestors, my parents, Jose Pimentel and Melodia Punsalan, my grandparents, Julian Pimentel and Ruperta Hermosura, Lucio Punsalan and Ernesta Ligan. This tradition of narrating one's ancestry I learned from the Indigenous peoples in the Pacific. It is a beautiful tradition to recognize the presence in our lives, those who have brought us into this world. Along this line, let me also honor the Indigenous leaders, some of whom I have journeyed with, Commissioner Pablo Santos, known as KPS, Apong Narding of Pastolan Subic, who are no longer with us, but who are among the many Indigenous leaders who paved the road to bring us this Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. I would also like to commend the other Indigenous communities whose struggles for the recognition of their rights provided the necessary reinforcement for IPRA to gain ground in Congress. Some of you are probably wondering what led me to write this book. Sister Victricia the other day asked me what was my main reason in writing this book. To be honest, I did not come across the IPRA in law school. I graduated in 2000 when IPRA was challenged before the Supreme Court. With us is Dean Sedfrey, who was one of the defenders of the IPRA when it was challenged in the Supreme Court. A few months after it was passed into law in 1997. So when the Supreme Court's decision upholding the constitutionality of the IPRA came, but only in December 2000. So when I started to work in 2002 for the NCIP in Region 3, I had to learn the IPRA with no textbooks or guide. Studying then the IPRA led me to so many questions with no exact or strong answers. Some advocates here would probably agree with me that IPRA defies the existing land legal system, and to some or a greater extent, it also challenges our Constitution. And during my fieldwork, responding to emergency situations and other issues affecting ancestral domains, those questions just grew enormously. And with mentoring from no less but KPS, some of the answers also came through his own line of questioning. Those questions motivated me to search not only for answers, but possible contextual solutions to address conflicting tenurial instruments, overlapping government policies, being implemented within the ancestral domains, while at the same time advocating for the recognition of rights under the IPRA, which rights for me at that time conflicted with some of the legal principles I learned in law school. As I moved to another government office, the questions persisted, and this encouraged me to pursue a master's in New Zealand. And with the research that is focused in, again, finding ways to optimize the use of indigenous lands. I would like to believe that the answers were mostly found in the midst of the experiences felt by indigenous communities, that IPRA is indeed working for them to thrive as indigenous peoples, being connected to their lands, their communities, their ancestry, their cultures, their indigenous knowledge, systems, and practices. Overall, it was being entrusted with these issues and challenges faced by indigenous communities I have worked with, somehow instilled within me a duty to share the lessons learned along the way and offer possible ways to meaningfully implement the IPRA through this book. So before I proceed with the contents of the book, let me go first to the first raffle. So I'd like to raise a question to our viewers, because this question was in fact asked to me by the business manager of REX, under which among the 8 subjects of the bar, where does the IPRA fall? So that is the first question. Where does the IPRA fall in the 8 bar subjects? So you can post the answers on Facebook and we will check later for the best answer. So the first, whoever gives the best answer among our guests, we will be giving the first raffle winner of the book. So let me now proceed with respect to the contents of the book. As indicated in the title itself, the book offers a commentary as well as a guide to understand, apply, invoke, and enforce the provisions of the IPRA, not just for indigenous communities, but for advocates, but also from law students, practitioners, and hopefully within the country's legal system. The 13 chapters of the IPRA is divided into 7 parts of the book, and part 1 presents an introduction to the IPRA. Introductory chapter, it narrates the legislative history of the IPRA and other laws giving recognition to the land rights of indigenous peoples. In line with the legislative history, the discussions between the framers of the Constitution on the constitutional provisions that laid down the foundation for the IPRA, including the deliberations between the authors of the IPRA, were presented. The important definition of terms in the IPRA are also thoroughly explained, citing and comparing these definitions with relevant or similar terms under existing Philippine laws and international covenants. Let me point out that while IPRA provides a definition for indigenous peoples, there is no universal definition of indigenous peoples given by other countries and international covenants for indigenous peoples. In part 1, I have also traced the historical underpinnings of indigenous land rights from indigenous peoples across the globe, not just in the Philippines. And this also includes various jurisdictions' interpretation of native titles. So that is the introductory chapter. For part 2, we move to the 4 bundle of rights, which many of us advocates consider as the core of the IPRA. In the first chapter of that part 2, which is chapter 3, focuses on the rights to ancestral domains. Under this chapter, we tackle the various rights as well as the responsibilities of indigenous peoples to their ancestral domains. It is often perceived that the rights to ancestral domains occupy the highest preference among the 4 rights affirmed by the IPRA. But the rights to ancestral domains should not be viewed as separate and distinct from cultural rights, from political rights, from economic rights, including the spiritual rights of indigenous peoples. These rights are very much interconnected. Some of the highlights of this chapter would include a discussion on the incidence of ownership of ancestral domains. The elements of the free, prior, informed consent were also thoroughly explained, with a case study providing for a more community-centered process of the NCIP, of the FPIC. Concerns or issues after the grant of the FPIC were also raised. Some legal remedies are also being recommended in some of the sections of this chapter. The second tier or set of bundle of rights in the IPRA is found in Chapter 4 of the law, under the right to self-governance and empowerment. Under this chapter, the right to self-governance is connected with the right to self-determination of indigenous peoples. While we can say that the four bundle of rights in the IPRA are interrelated, it is the right of self-governance that can be considered as key to the assertion of all the bundle of rights of indigenous communities. In this chapter, I have provided the proposed structure where powers are shared beyond the centralized or single unit of leadership prevailing in most indigenous communities. In this chapter, I have raised questions on whether the present leadership structures and rules of indigenous communities can still address the various situations arising from the assertion of their rights under the IPRA. That was part of my research as well, my master's research. And another part of the discussion will be, how do we balance indigenous customary law if it intersects with the Philippine legal system? Along that line, I have outlined customary laws from some of the Pacific countries where customary law and penal punishments were harmonized. The roles of the indigenous people's mandatory representatives, what can be posited as the indigenous people's agenda, and some DILG opinions on issues surrounding the appointment of IPMRs can also be found under this chapter. Moving now to the third tier of rights, under Chapter 5 of the law will be social justice and human rights. In this chapter, the government is reminded of its duty to respect, protect, fulfill the human rights of indigenous peoples. Some of the human rights embodied in the Bill of Rights of our Constitution are likewise reiterated in this chapter. Sections 25 to 28 mentions the various support that the state should extend to indigenous communities. In particular, Section 28 encourages a complete and adequate education system for primary and secondary IP students. The last tier of rights or bundle of rights is found in Chapter 6, Cultural Integrity. I must say that this is the part where I really found it difficult to discuss. In this chapter, cultural integrity actually translates to the pursuit of sovereignty by indigenous peoples. And to understand what cultural integrity signifies for indigenous communities, I gathered some of the quotes from indigenous leaders. From Macleing Dulag, the known Kalinga chief in the northern Luzon of the Philippines, I quote, "To claim a place is the birthright of every man. For us indigenous peoples, ancestral land is literally life. Our continued survival as viable communities and distinct cultures with our brand of indigenous ethnic identities depend on it." The late Vin Deloria, an American Indian lawyer and a revered leader of the U.S. indigenous movement, says, "Indigenous sovereignty consists more of a continued cultural integrity than of political powers, and to the degree that a nation loses its sense of cultural identity, to that degree it suffers a loss of sovereignty." Another Native American leader, Kickingbird, said, and I quote, "Sovereignty cannot be separated from people or their culture. Continuance therefore lies at the core of cultural rights." So under this chapter, discussions on protection of culture, the protection of culture and the indigenous knowledge systems and practices of indigenous communities are presented. Establishing indigenous learning systems, highlighting the DepEd and SHED policies on indigenous education, education forms part of this chapter as well. Moving now to part 3 of the book, so we're halfway through the book. Part 3 covers the primary office for indigenous peoples, which is the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples. The members of the commission, its bureaus and their functions, and I highlighted more the work of the Ancestral Domains Office in this chapter. Part 4 will cover the process of delineation of ancestral domains and the recognition of other rights, such as the vested rights and government reservations. I have provided a simplified summary on the delineation process from personal experiences in validating the applications for ancestral domains in some indigenous communities I have worked with in Region 3. Part 5 explains the quasi-jurisdiction of the NCIP and how rights under the IPRA can be enforced. A summary of the cases where NCIP's jurisdiction was challenged was also discussed. with some contentious views on these decisions. In Part 6, the penal provisions of the law can be found. It is quite sad that the penal provisions seem to be overlooked on the ground, but many violations of the IPRA can actually base their cause of action through these provisions. Lastly, we are now in Part 7, the transitory and final provisions. The 2018 case decided by the Supreme Court in Republic versus NCIP, interpreting Section 78, was likewise examined. In each of the sections of the IPRA, I offered different approaches to guide the reader in understanding that particular provision of the IPRA. When I was writing the commentaries, I also made sure that some of the questions that I experienced along the way in the field, some thoughts while reflections, I tried to put those insight in each of the commentaries. So in some actual cases applying the law are summarized. Possible cases from facts derived from real issues faced by Indigenous communities are elucidated. Proposed policies, possible action plans, reference to other jurisdictions' enforcement or interpretation of similar circumstances faced by Indigenous communities are sparingly provided in the commentaries. International laws referring to similar rights are also presented. Relevant local laws of countries with Indigenous peoples are also introduced. I can say that this book somehow can be considered as an initial report on the implementation of the IPRA. But I would admit that the commentaries here are actually bold attempts to move the law from its ideal perspectives to realizing its probable full potential. But given the complexities of IPRA's enforcement in practice, the book's effort may well continue in the years to come. Finally, let me say that the book indeed has limitations. There is a dearth of jurisprudence interpreting the IPRA. Indigenous people still, for one reason or the other, have not yet fully made use of this law. Thus, discussions here may lead us wanting more. Some of the contentious issues are also left to be answered by the actual stakeholders. It is understandable that certain suggestions, interpretation, or outlook may be taken differently by the reader. I take responsibility for this, and the mistakes and shortcomings of the book are mine alone. Thank you very much to everyone who raised this event. So that wraps up my short synopsis or walk through the contents of the book.
Okay, thank you very much for that very rich presentation. Attorney Mel Pimentel. All right, truly your work will help in safeguarding the cultural integrity and rights of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Ayan. So, guys, did you get the question of Attorney Pimentel a while ago? Let me just repeat, for everyone's reference. The question is, where does the IPRA fall under the 8-bar subjects? Okay, so where does the IPRA fall under the 8-bar subjects? Comment your answer in our Facebook Live comment section, and later, Attorney Pimentel will choose the winner during our live raffle program. Okay. Now, in behalf of Rex Education, allow me to congratulate you, Attorney Pimentel, on yet another feather in your cap with the release of this book. We are with you in our initiative to provide an expert guidance for the implementation of the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act and the advancement of Indigenous rights in our country, of course. We look forward to learning more from you through our books and lectures. Congratulations, Dean, and here's to more years of working together as stewards of legal education. All right, now to tell us more about what makes the book an expert guide for the implementation of Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, let us all give a warm welcome or a warm virtual welcome to a former government lawyer for the National Commission on Indigenous People who worked with our author and has successfully defended several cases which benefited Indigenous communities, such as the Indigenous people in Bukidnon versus the Central Mindanao University and the Mangyans of Paitan, Oriental Mindoro. Okay, everyone, a warm welcome to the Associate Justice of the Sandigan Bayan, Presiding Justice Amparo M. Cabotaje-Tang.
A pleasant afternoon to everyone. Allow me to express my sincerest congratulations to Senior State Solicitor Melanie Pimentel for authoring this book on the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. I can think of no one better to provide an in-depth analysis, insight, and recommendations on the implementation of the IPRA. In this book, she has provided a comprehensive and practical guide to the law as well as reference to international best practices. More importantly, she has imbued this book with her real-life experiences and desires for attaining the full potential of the law in safeguarding the cultural integrity and rights of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. I cannot think of any better person to write this book in light of my experiences with her during my stint in the office of the Solicitor General, or the OSG. I had the distinct pleasure of working with Attorney Pimentel on several cases involving the recovery of lands of the Mangyans in the Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Reservation in Oriental Mindoro. Allow me to briefly narrate the same. In Proclamation number 809, issued by then Governor General Joseph R. Hayden on June 4, 1935, the Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Reservation was created exclusively, reserving it for the Mangyan tribes in the area. Over time, however, and due to the onset of World War II and the influx of settlers from other regions in the country, the reservation was illegally occupied by many non-Mangyans. After efforts to negotiate with these occupants to reach a settlement failed, the OSG, upon representation of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, filed cases for recovery of possession before the Regional Trial Court, or RTC, of Calapan City in Oriental Mindoro. In its initial ruling in 2007, the RTC unfortunately dismissed the cases for lack of merit, which the OSG challenged before the Court of Appeals. Thanks to the perseverance and competence of Attorney Pimentel, and of course, Sister Victricia, over the course of many years, the Court of Appeals remanded the cases to the RTC for further proceedings. In 2015, the RTC rendered an amended decision ordering the occupants to vacate the premises and to restore possession to the Republic. In 2019, the Fourth Division of the Court of Appeals rendered a decision affirming the amended decision of the RTC and explicitly affirming the right of the Mangyans to reclaim possession of the said lands, which have been theirs from the beginning in their settlement in Mindoro, as mentioned by the Court of Appeals. In December of 2020, the Supreme Court denied with finality the petition for review filed by the occupants. As of the latest information from Attorney Pimentel, the OSG had already filed a motion for execution last July of 2021. And this motion was granted by the RTC just this September 29, 2021. Indeed, accomplishments such as this give us clear hope for the victory of the rule of law in our country and highlights the value of Attorney Pimentel's present book, which embodies her firsthand experiences and insights. I sincerely hope that many will take heed this book as it deserves. Thank you and congratulations again to Attorney Pimentel. May everyone have a pleasant afternoon and please stay safe.
All right. Thank you very much, Presiding Justice Amparo M. Cabotaje-Tang. At this point, we will now be hearing more about how the works of Attorney Pimentel can help in paving the way for a better future for our fellow men. Let us all give a warm welcome to the Professor and Program Coordinator for Institute of Developmental Studies at Massey University, Professor Regina Scheyvens.
Kia ora and congratulations, Melanie. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening, New Zealand time, this afternoon, Philippines time, to be part of this book launch. And my apologies, I got the start time wrong, so sorry about that. Melanie graduated with her Masters in International Development a few years ago now, and she's one of those students who I remember extremely fondly, because not only was she really intelligent and really involved in all of the activities of the Development Studies program at Massey, but she was also very well-humoured, and she had a few different nicknames. Probably can't share them all with you tonight, but one of them was she was a self-confessed stirrer, as in she was good at, she loved to hear a little bit about what the gossip was around the place, if there was any interesting romances going on or anything, any little bits of, she was well-humoured. We really enjoyed having her in the program, and it's been delightful to see what she's been able to achieve back in the Philippines, especially for the rights of Indigenous peoples. As you might be aware, New Zealand's a country that holds the rights of Indigenous people up very strongly, and it hasn't always been that way. But due to a really important assertion of Māori rights in the 1970s and 80s onwards from there, in relation to the Treaty of Waitangi, which was signed back in 1840 between the Crown and Māori, they had basically held government since then to account for their duties and obligations to the Indigenous people of New Zealand. And that's made for a much better country, a much more tolerant country, and a country in which we have a better understanding of the need for things like kaitiakitanga, which is stewardship, the Māori word for stewardship or guardianship of natural resources. So rather than seeing nature as a resource to be exploited, as has often been the case with past development, instead really understanding that through looking at using an Indigenous lens to understand development means we have to work together with all things, all creatures, all living beings, and work for the well-being of all. And we're all aware in a period of where the planet's at threat with climate change. There have been huge fires raging in parts of the world like Greece, terrible floods, terrible cyclones, typhoons, etc., much more extreme events than we've had in the past. And we know that there are lots of issues that the world is facing. So turning to the wisdom of Indigenous peoples, I think, can help all of us move forward. And then it's absolutely wonderful to see when people in the legal profession fully understand and appreciate the legal rights of Indigenous peoples, and especially around their land, which is why I'm so excited about the work that Melanie's been doing. It's really great to see. And by the way, Melanie, across the Pacific, there are really similar, in all these Pacific languages, versions of land is life and life is land. It's just a constant. And people saying without land, we are nothing. For those of you who don't know, my research is mainly on tourism and sustainable tourism in the Pacific Islands. And it's been really interesting. Obviously, during this last 18 months, there's been no tourism to most Pacific countries. The French territories opened up early, but the others haven't. And that's devastating if you've got no wage subsidy and that's your only income. I know it's similar in parts of the Philippines that are known for tourism. They don't have very diversified economies in the Pacific, so it's been hard. But nobody's starved. Why is nobody starved to death without any income for 18 months? It's because they have land. because Indigenous peoples have rights to land in most of the Pacific as well. So they've been able to go back to that land and rely on traditional wisdom and customary systems to keep themselves going. And myself and my colleague from Fiji have been doing a lot of publishing about that in the last 18 months, because we think more needs to be known about the strengths of Indigenous peoples. They're not just peoples there that are special that we need to look out for. They're vulnerable, we need to defend them. There is that. But there's also a lot that those of us, certainly in the Western world or living urbanised lives in metropolitan areas around the world, a lot we can learn from Indigenous peoples. So finally, I just want to really wish Melanie all the best going forward and really celebrate this great achievement that she's had. And it just does my heart good to hear that we've got students working for social justice and human rights around the globe. So I'll finish there, otherwise I'm just going to have to shed a tear or two, because I do feel very proud of Melanie tonight. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Regina Scheyvens. We are very honored to have you grace this event and guide us through how the book can help our practicing lawyers in their continuous pursuit to safeguard the cultural integrity of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Again, thank you very much, Professor Scheyvens. Now let's welcome another luminary to give his testimony about the book. The former Dean of Ateneo de Manila University School of Law and the Head of Research, Publications and Linkages Office of the Philippine Judicial Academy, or the PhilJA. Ladies and gentlemen, Dean Sedfrey M. Candelaria. Dean?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, it's really a meeting of friends this afternoon, and I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to congratulate, very good friend, Melanie, Congratulations. And I also would like to recognize the source of inspiration, I'm sure, for Mela and also for me for a very long time, working with the Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Mission, Sister Victricia, Sister Vic, glad you're here. And of course, a very good friend, co-worker at the Philippine Judicial Academy, our presiding justice of the Sandigan Bayan, Justice Ampi, Cabotaje-Tang. And I could not forget, of course, a very close friend indeed, a spiritual mentor, Paring Bert. Magandang hapon po sa inyo. Magandang hapon. I mentioned these people because they're sources of inspirations for us, And I'm sure Mela, in the course of her work, and it's very evident in the content of the book that this is a mix of both authoritative opinions, scholarly commentaries, but at the same time, it is filled with the experiences that Mela had gone through in the course of her work, starting from the NCIP and, of course, for a very long time now with the OSG. I believe that unlike any other book, what distinguishes the book right now, and I've shared this, in fact, in a part of the book, where I wrote something for Nelai, it departs really from the very traditional backward-looking, reviewing jurisprudence only, but it is forward-looking. It is a book that actually will become a tool for even non-lawyers. That's how the book appeals, to every reader. And I'm sure that the non-government organizations and the indigenous peoples groups, would benefit a lot, from the content of this material. I'm also hopeful that the book will be read by no less than the members of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, since they are responsible for generating interpretations of our legislations, our Constitution, and our own experience when the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act went up early on to be challenged by mining groups, before the Supreme Court as far back as 1998, 1999, we realized that there is a dearth of interest and, in fact, if I may say, knowledge on the part of quite a number of the members of the legal community. And that's why from the very beginning, you will see that there is a very fragile situation that the law has been sitting on. But that did not prevent the law from being implemented. And I am very, very much appreciative that at this point, a person like Melai had really focused very diligently in trying to hammer out even the gray areas of the provisions of IPRA. And hopefully that those who sit at the highest court of the land, those who run the agencies of government, who would have to interpret the law and apply it in the context of the rights of indigenous peoples in this country, would see through the value of this document. It is a novel legislation, the IPRA. The book, on the other hand, gives life to every provision. And it is the experience of Melai through the years, through the hard work she has done with indigenous peoples communities, with drawing inspirations from persons like Sister Vic, Paringbert, and all the leaders and members of the indigenous groups. That, I think, would be something to consider as far as this book is concerned. Let me just say very briefly that among us who have been in the teaching profession for some time, there is a quote that often runs around, and that's where I'd like to leave some word with you. We have always said that the life of the law has never been logic. It has always been experience. That's been attributed to a jurist from the United States, Oliver Wendell Holmes. And that exactly is what Melai had lived through. That's how she had imbibed the law, through the prism of her own personal experience in trying to defend and advocate for the rights of indigenous peoples. Thank you very much, Rex Bookstore, for having taken this very, I think, good pick of person, Melai, for doing the book and walking with her through the process and making sure that the book is one that is of such quality that even global partners, I'm sure global partners would want it immediately right after this book launch. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat at mag-ingat po kayo sa araw-araw.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dean Sedfrey M. Candelaria. We are very honored to have you with us today. Okay, now let us all listen to the representatives of our indigenous communities on how the book will help in protecting them and advance the rights of their people. Ladies and gentlemen, let us hear from the former commissioner of the National Commission for the Indigenous People in Central Mindanao, Commissioner Edtami Mansayagan. Sir?
Maraming salamat. Magandang hapon. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm so honored to be part of this launching. First, I would like to express appreciation and congratulations to Melai for writing this book. I'm really, I really like that something was written about Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. It's been years I have been part of the commission. Actually, I become part of the first commission, then appointed for the second commission. So in our commission, during our time, we were tasked of the writing down the guidelines on how to delineate ancestral domain, on how to carry out prior informed consent guidelines. Those are the things that really how to put the details on the implementation of the law. Being not a lawyer and being my upbringing was, I work with communities. I work directly with issues on the ground. But we are fortunate that we have lawyers like Milay and of course our colleague Attorney Lingating, Attorney Donuan, and others in the legal office of NCIP. And it is, I think, very important experience on my part. After that, I become part of the expert mechanism in the rights of the indigenous peoples, subsidiary body of the United Nations Human Rights Council, wherein during the last part of my term, I was also part of delegation of in-brief expert mechanism to New Zealand. So I also understand briefly with that short visit, I found the similarity that between the indigenous peoples, the Philippines and the Maori people of New Zealand. I really look forward to the wider distribution of this book. I'm very sure that not only in the Philippines, this book is very useful because the governance, territories, and all those themes being discussed by United Nations, which is also in the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, is very relevant to all indigenous peoples all over the world. So Philippines is very fortunate for being the only state that come up with Indigenous Peoples Rights Act as a domestic law. All other states has yet to come up with their own domestic legislation on the recognition of the rights of the indigenous people. So this is a challenge and opportunity for us in the Philippines, and this book really contributes to that direction. I am so honored to be part of this launching, especially seeing Father Bert here and Attorney Sedfrey. I agree with Attorney Milay in saying that the implementation of the Indigenous Peoples and Rights Act is far from really utilizing, implementing the law. In fact, as we celebrate this almost 2 decades, more than 2 decades of IPRA, I think my evaluation is, I think only the NCIP officials and the workers at present are really the primary beneficiary of IPRA. Of course, some communities where projects are implemented. But in our case, we already have the ancestral domain, but we are facing, threat from the Department of Agrarian Reform to subdivide our land. And I visited our provincial office here in Cotabato province, and looking at the implementation of the quasi-judicial function of NCIP, but I think it's not being implemented, it's not working. But again, it goes on as a challenge for indigenous people. I have actually requested or inquired from the commission, the present commission, if they have already come up with their own guidelines of creating for the creation of tribal barangays, because without formal arrangement with the state of the institutions of governance within our community, then partnership cannot be possible, and development perspectives would only be one-sided. One important thing about IPRA is it should be a partnership. The cornerstone of Indigenous Peoples Rights Act is the recognition of the collective rights to self-governance. And I think that is still needs to be implemented, to be detailed, and this is what actually what I'm doing within my own community. So again, congratulations, Attorney Pimentel, for writing this book, and thank you very much for the time.
All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Edtami Mansayagan. Now to share his testimonies, may we welcome another friend that advocates the advancement of our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Ladies and gentlemen, Father Albert Alejo. Father?
Oh yes, son, thank you. Yeah, together I joined the chorus of congratulating Melai. Yeah, I'm used to calling her Melai, not attorney. But Melai, congratulations to your first book. First book. Because this book, the fact is, I have not read the whole thing, but I trust if Attorney Sedfrey Candelaria says it's good, it must be good. If Sister Vic says the author is to be trusted, she must be. If Edtami Mansayagan, coming from the local struggle, says this is really needed, then it is needed. It is timely. And if Rex Bookstore publishes it, invests a lot in its production, and stamps its name on this book, then it must be good. Diba? So congratulations. And if it comes from Melai, it's really solid, I must say. Now, this book makes me recall my experiences, and I realized I've been exposed to the indigenous peoples for 40 years now. Although it's not very clear, but since 1981, when I was a novice, I went to Bukidnon and got exposed to the Manobos during that time, martial law. And then 1982, I climbed Sierra Madre to meet the Dumagats. 1986, I went to the Tibolis of Lake Cebu and watched films on struggles of the indigenous peoples. Later in my studies, I stayed for 1.5 years in Mount Apo with a group of Edtami Mansayagan. But I knew Edtami Mansayagan when he was still young and innocent, but already a fighter. I saw him and his brother in the video documentary films on the struggle of the indigenous peoples against the Philippine National Oil Company way back when I was studying in London. So I got the initiation from the brothers Edtami and Jimmy Mansayagan. And until now, I really admire you, Edtami, and thank you very much for your dedication. Then along the way, I got to know many other tribes, the Tedurais and the Lamangyan and the Eruman and Manobos in their struggle for autonomy within autonomy vis-a-vis the Bangsamoro. And then in my studies in anthropology in London, I also had the chance to visit the Aka tribe of northern Thailand, the Bills in India, among others. And my conclusion there is really, there is a need to close the gap between the local struggling communities and leaders and the legal profession. So the law has to be grounded on the land where the struggle is really going on. And I'm really very happy when I heard from Atty. Melanie that she was bent, really dedicated on producing a commentary, a running commentary on every section of the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act. And I said, finally, we can close the gap between the professional and the practitioner and the academic and the activist. So this is going to be very, very helpful. I really want to see the whole thing. No? Now, I think there's a challenge here also to many other sectors involved somehow in the promotion of the Indigenous people's rights and well-being, because all of them are also potential beneficiaries. Now, when I was asked to give a talk to the law school deans of law schools in the country, I said we need some anthropolegal theory and anthropolegal approaches to dealing with Indigenous peoples, because culture is very much part of this. I know many people who argue for the rights, political rights of Indigenous peoples still don't understand culture. And that section on cultural integrity, cultural rights, I think is the least understood. Maybe we can spend more time on this. But the solution is not to go very detailed in different interpretation of symbols, etc. But the solution is really learning from experience, how the law touches ground and how the voices from the ground could reach those lawmakers. And so I think that this book will challenge and at the same time empower educational institutions. The Indigenous people's education is now open, but part of the Indigenous people's education should be education on the IPRA, and this book should be very important. There is also the search for environmental activism, which touches very much on the Indigenous peoples. Even Pope Francis pays special attention to the Indigenous peoples in his discussion on Laudato Si. So the churches will have to read this. The church leaders will have to read this if we are to go beyond just mouthing our advocacies for Indigenous people's rights. And the beautiful thing about this book, I know, even if I have not read it, is that it combines local experiences with comparative insights from New Zealand, from the Maoris, from the Pacific, and from other parts of the world. And that's, and probably these parts of the world should also benefit from this. Yeah. And so this book should be sold and should be bought, not just locally, but also internationally. I would like to see this book on the shelf of every decent library in the world. And finally, about the author. So congratulations to the author, Melanie Pimentel. You are both an academic and activist. I know your approach is really solid, academic and legal jurisprudence, but there's the spirit of advocacy there, of the activist. You're a lawyer and at the same time a constant learner. You're local, but at the same time global. You are a professional, at the same time a practitioner. You're a fighter and also a friend. So congratulations for your first book. I repeat, first book, because I believe there will be a second and a third. More power to you, Melanie. And Rex Bookstore, thank you very much. Saludo.
Thank you very much, Father Albert Alejo. Okay, so hearing your praises of the book gives us utmost pride for having been chosen and entrusted with the publication of this masterpiece. And yes, Father, you are correct. Let us look forward to seeing copies of this book around the world. Now, in the same vein, allow us to express our gratitude to you as well for being one of the stewards of justice. Okay, now lastly, let us hear another testimony from a representative of an indigenous community itself. Let's welcome the Agpamuon, or traditional leader of the Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Indigenous community, Mr. Edicio Banlugan.
Sa lahat, ako po si Edicio Banlugan, Tribong Alangan, leader Agpamuon ng Paitan Alangan-Mangyan Reservation. Ang batas IPRA po ay malaking naitulong sa aming mga katutubo, lalo na sa usaping mga lupaing ninuno at sa usaping reservasyon. Kasi po, kung wala yung batas IPRA, medyo nangangapa kami sa paglaban ng karapatan naming mga katutubo sa aming mga lupain. Ang batas IPRA po ay tunay na ginagalang namin at sinusunod sa aming kalooban. Sa ngayon po, ako ay ang aking karanasan sa pakikipaglaban sa aming lupaing reservasyon ay marami pong treatment, pananakot ang mga di katutubo. Kung tawagin namin mga Tagalog o kaya Ilocano. Subalit, hindi ko po iniinda yun sapagkat karapatan namin ipaglaban ang aming lupaing ninuno. Pagkatapos po, ako po ay nagpapasalamat din sa aking mga tagagabay tulad ng Mangyan Mission, lalo-lalo na po yung mga Madre Space Congregation sa pangunguna po ni Sister Vic. Sila po ang malaking naitulong sa aming paghahabol sa aming reservasyon. At lalong-lalo na pong nagpapasalamat ako kay Atty. Milay. Ang tawag po namin sa kanya ay Atty. Dahil po siya ay kapartner ko sa usapin, lalo na siya ang legal na tumutulong sa amin. Kaya po ako maraming pong salamat sa kanila dahil kung wala po sila hanggang ngayon kami wala pa rin kaalam-alam. Sa kanilang gabay kami po ay natuto ipaglaban ang aming karapatan. Maraming pong salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Edicio Banlugan. Hearing your stories and testimonies surely inspired not just our practicing lawyers, but also our aspiring lawyers. All right, now we have come to another exciting part of this program. We are now opening the floor for Q&A with our author, Atty. Melanie Pimentel. So guys, please feel free to comment your questions below, no? Para sa ating participants here sa Zoom, even sa participants natin dyan sa Facebook Live. This is your chance para tanungin, no? Magtanong or mag-inquire directly from our book author na si Atty. Mel Pimentel. We will be selecting 3 questions from the comments, and as we move forward, I'll be reading the questions in your behalf. Okay, so meron na ba tayong mga questions dyan? I'm sure excited na si Attorney Pimentel, no, na sagutin ang inyong mga inquiries. Okay, let's see. Tingnan natin. Come on, huwag na kayong mahiya magtanong, no? Once in a lifetime opportunity to. Huwag na nating palampasin. Andito na rin tayo. Okay, attorney, parang nahihiya ata silang magtanong sa'yo, no? Pero tingnan natin. Sige. Okay, do we have anyone, no, na magtatanong? Do you have questions coming from our audience? Okay, so while waiting for the questions, no, let me just remind you about the question of Attorney Mel Pimentel a while ago, no? Ang tanong niya, no, para din sa raffle natin later was, let's see, hanapin ko lang yung question, no? Saan daw ang IPRA, no, na na-mention among sa 8 subjects ng bar? Ayan. Okay, so I guess meron na tayong first question. Or ano to, a comment, sabi ng comment natin from Fernald Guadilla Dena. Thanks, Attorney Pimentel, praying that your book will be of big help in the promotion of IP's right. God bless. All right, thank you so much for that comment, Mr. Fernald Guadilla Dena. Okay, ito, we have our first question. Get ready, Attorney Pimentel, ha? This is from Irene. Okay, so Ma'am Melanie, sabi niya dito, the IPRA guidebook is very timely as we confront the challenges of globalization. The question is, how can it be translated in our everyday dealings? Okay, so ulitin ko yung question, no, Attorney. Sabi niya dito, how can the IPRA guidebook be translated in our everyday dealings?
How can it be translated in
our everyday dealings? Yes.
With indigenous communities, or I'm not so sure if I understood the question. Is it dealing with indigenous communities? The IPRA is mainly a law book, but it would also give us some sort of an overview about how the ways of life of indigenous peoples. So when they encounter indigenous peoples, or naging kaklase ba nila, or they probably work in some corporations which have social corporate responsibility. The book will be handy because in the book they will be guided as to how they should respect the rights of indigenous communities under the IPRA, how they should also protect them in the course of dealing with these indigenous communities. So I hope I answered the question.
All right, thank you for that, Attorney Pimentel. Now we have another one coming from Professor Scheyvens. Yeah, her question is, do you think that students currently studying law at university are learning enough about indigenous people?
I think Dean Sedfrey would be the best person to answer that question. Not all law schools teach IPRA, or that IPRA is part of their curriculum. So as I mentioned a while ago during my introduction, I never studied IPRA when I was still in law school, but that was a long time ago. But it's not a required subject under the legal education curriculum. Am I correct, Dean said? So,
yeah, that's problematic. But I think many schools now many schools now are fully aware of IPRA simply because it is part of the Constitution, no? And while there is still a dearth of professors who deal with it, there are schools, even in the South, who now use it as a framework to look at other aspects of the law. They use it as a prism, no, through which procedural law or even as basic as civil law touch base, no, with the rights of indigenous people. So I think there will be more interest here because the way the book has been structured, if I may say, is cross-cutting. It is relevant on different aspects, even tax. You know, there's an aspect there on tax, no? There's an aspect on local government, no? So anyone now wanting to know more about the impact of this book can pick it up and use it in other aspects of the legal system. That's how cross-cutting this material is. And I'm sure they'll little by little discover the value of this at this point, especially natural resource issues. No, that's where it is going to be really very helpful for those who make decisions about our natural resources, no, and the patrimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your input, no, Attorney Pimentel and Professor Sedfrey Candelaria. Now we have another question. Let me just read the question. This is from Samuel Lorente. Why is it that until today, the implementation remains to be a big challenge? So I think we're talking about the IPRA here. So Attorney, why is it until today the implementation remains to be a big challenge?
I would again also ask help from the former commissioner of the NCIP, but the book somehow explains why it remains to be a big challenge. Conflicting government policies, the lack of concrete support to the NCIP are among the few reasons that we can cite as one of the reasons why implementation remains to be a big challenge. In the book, there is also a challenge also to the Supreme Court and to also to the legal system in itself to recognize and incorporate the IPRA as part of the legal system, not contradicting it, but actually recognizing and respecting what the law offers and what the law has to protect and recognize. So siguro dapat talaga suportahan yung NCIP, that's foremost. Second, it's amongst the legal system, the law students, the law schools, our judiciary, there is a need for us to really reinforce what the IPRA signifies and what it really wants to implement and enforce already.
Okay, thank you for that, Attorney Pimentel. Now, ito na, Attorney, no, pinaka-last question from our viewers. I'm sure marami silang curious and gustong-gusto talaga nilang malaman to. Attorney, how much is the book and where can we buy it? Is it also available online? Nako, it's your time to promote the book.
It's available online now. I think it was posted yesterday by Rex in its e-store. It's also available in the branches. It's 595 pesos. But after this, I think after this lecture, there will be free 3 books to the audience as well. So you can grab it through the e-store. I'm not so sure if it's available internationally. So, but you can request Rex if in case somebody from the other parts of the world wants to buy the book.
All right, so there you have it. Thank you very much, Attorney Melanie Pimentel. So guys, no, $5.99 lang. So grab your copy.
$5.95.
Oh, sorry, $5.95. Okay, tamo, mas mura pa ng 4 pesos. This is sinabi ko. So $5.95. Ayan, so right after this, pwede na kayong mag-order online. No? Ayan. So at this time naman, as promised, we will now be giving away 3 copies of this new book. Sino kaya ang magiging lucky winner, no, to win the bar review methods and bar exam techniques? Ayan, by our author. Also, no? Sige, tignan natin kung sino
IPRA.
ang I'm sorry, yung IPRA na book, no? Authored by our of course, Attorney Melanie Pimentel. Okay, so reminder lang everyone, we will be announcing the name of the lucky person for this raffle. Now, if your name is called, no, please comment down present. So if you're here with us, we will then verify if it's you who won. All right, so ready na ba ang ating Wheel of Fortune? Ang mga names kung sino ang mananalo? Okay, again, no, 30 seconds lamang ang ibibigay natin para sa ating mga participants to comment present. No? Halimbawa, natawag ang name mo, all you need to do is comment present sa ating chat box para ma-acknowledge that you are here, that you're still present. Ayan. So again, 3 copies of the book, no? The Indigenous People. Okay. So let's see. Meron na ba tayo niyan? Okay. While waiting, no? Since andito na si Attorney Pimentel with us, Attorney, you asked a question kanina and we have a winner for that already, no? So yan, I see Greg Ong. His answer is political law, constitutional law, and civil law, land title, and deeds. Attorney, tama po ba?
Pwede na. As Dean Sedfrey explained a while ago, it cuts through a lot of subjects. When I was answering the business manager of Rex, I told him that IPRA is sui generis, no? A law. It's a law in itself. It actually defies even the Constitution and our existing land legal system. It's mostly part of environmental law, but it's also being discussed in our land titles and deeds as well as in our political law. But most of the environmental law professors incorporate it as part of their environmental law subject. Medyo malapit ng sagot because Greg Ong mentioned land titles and deed, political law, as well as constitutional law. It's part of the Constitution. There are about 6 provisions under the Constitution that mentions or refers to the rights of indigenous communities. So congratulations, Mr. Greg Ong.
Yes.
I think he's from our office. So,
so
the son of the son of the former Sandigan Bayan Justice Gregory Ong, I think.
All right.
Congratulations, Greg Ong.
Yes, congratulations, Mr. Greg Ong. Attorney, thank you for that explanation. Now I think ready na tayo to raffle 2 more. No? 2 more copies of the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, no? The Commentaries and Guide in Practice by our beloved Rex author, of course, Attorney Melanie Pimentel, which is with us today, no? Talagang thank you for being here, Attorney Pimentel. Okay, so ayan na, no? Nagsispin na tayo. And our first winner is, let's see. Okay. Tignan natin kung sino ang unang raffle winner, no? Siya ang first raffle winner. Okay, so Rolly Olikino. Rolly, if you are here, all you need to do is type present. Okay?
Yeah. Yes, I think I saw him. He's a legal intern at our office as well.
Andito pala.
I'm actually supervising him.
Tingnan mo, alert na alert. Sige, intayin lang natin. Kasi siya kanina. So, hintayin natin siya mag-comment ng present. I-confirm lang natin from our partners here in Rex. Okay, so, ayan. Congratulations, Rolly. Nag-comment na siya ng present. So, ikaw ay mag-uwi ng isang libreng copy ng IPRA book by Attorney Melanie Pimentel. Alright, so wag na natin patagalin pa. I'm sure excited ng lahat. Let's spin the wheel for the second winner. Ayan. I'm sure kinakabahan na yung iba. Sabi, ako sana yung manalo, no? 595 din yan. Okay, so AJ Tolentino. AJ Tolentino, if you are here, comment present para makita ng ating mga partners, no? Para ma-verify if andito ka pa. hanggang sa raffle. Okay, so you have 25 seconds para mag-comment ng present sa ating comment section sa chat box. Okay, last 10 seconds. Okay, ayan. And congratulations because si AJ ay present. Okay, ayan. So congratulations again sa ating tatlong winners. Yung isa is nanalo siya because he was able to answer correctly Attorney Pimentel's question. Okay, the other two naman nanalo because of the raffle. Again, you'll be receiving a copy of the Indigenous Peoples Rights Act, Commentaries and Guide in Practice by our beloved Rex author, Attorney Melanie Pimentel. All right. So congratulations, everyone. Now, on that note, we have come to the end of this afternoon's program. And indeed, it was a very productive learning afternoon with our legal luminary, Attorney Mel Pimentel. And of course, our distinguished guests. Thank you very much to all of you. Now, on behalf of Rex Education, I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude for having been chosen as your partner in legal education. We look forward to more years of fruitful partnership as we continue to work together to enable the law students and lawyers to achieve their dreams of becoming lawyers and excelling as one. To everyone who joined us this afternoon, thank you for learning with us and for choosing Rex to be your partner in learning. See you all on our next book launch and lecture. Thank you and keep soaring, Edo Campeons.
Congrats, Melanie.
Thank you,
Melay,
Vincent.
congrats.
Thank you po for everyone.
Paring
Lahat po
Bert,
nang nandito.
hello. Mr.
Meron na sa Germany, meron sa US. Maraming salamat. Mga estudyante ko na nahihirapan sa klase ko nandito. Sedfrey, thank you for your very nice.
We'll wait for the next book.
Thank you. Thank you po sa lahat. Thank you, Commissioner.
Bye, Mel. Thank you.
Attorney Pimentel.
Okay po.